let's go ahead and jump right into recapping the Raiders versus Bills Week 2 matchup.
Yep. The Raiders lost. And that's pretty much what we expected. I mean, that's what we predicted, essentially.
Mm-hmm. You're not a very good fan.
Well, I mean, it's funny. Like, I had a conversation with my dad about the Niners and Rams game because, there were a lot of red jerseys and jackets and shirts in the LA crowd, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad was like, wow, like, I didn't realize the Niners travel that well. And I said, well, when your team goes to NFC championships and Super Bowls semi consistently in a 5 year span, you're going to want to go to games. And when you
Mm-hmm.
expect your team to win a lot of games, you're going to go to games. When your team isn't that predicament, like the Rams right now, you're not going to want to go to games. Like, I'm not going to fork up the amount of money it takes to go to Las Vegas and watch a game in that stadium if I don't think that they can go out there and win any given game.
I
So,
think I think part of what you said has a little bit to do with it, but it's not like the Rams have been scrubs like for the past several years. Like even the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl, they had been in an NFC championship game and a Super Bowl just a couple years before that. And the Rams have been competitive and had great superstars. The only thing is that they moved their entire franchise from St. Louis over to LA, but they were in LA before. Um, but I think also too, Niner fans just have a little bit of extra cash to throw around, and there's a huge fan base in LA, of Niner fans.
well, I think one of the issues is these new stadiums, these brand new stadiums that just got built. The first thing they do, from what I understand, from what I remember from the Raiders Stadium, is they sell PSLs, personally owned or licensed seats. Um, and you purchase that seat or multiple seats for tens of thousands of dollars and you get season tickets, but they're your seats. You're not going to not have them until you give it up or whatever, but you're paying for like probably at least 10 seasons worth, right? It's like front loading money to help pay for the stadium. I'm assuming that's what it's for. So what happens is you get these wealthier people that may not actually care as much about football buying 2 to 4 seats and then reselling them on the aftermarket to the highest bidder, right? So that's what's happening in Vegas. That's what's probably happening in Los Angeles. So if your team's not consistently winning, why would I pay $600 just for the tickets or one ticket to go to Vegas, plus flight because I live in the Bay Area, plus hotel in Vegas, plus food, plus whatever? You better be a fucking winner if you're going to get me to go do that. Like, I wanted to go to Buffalo because I like their fan experience from what I've seen online with them jumping on tables and stuff, in the pregame stuff, but tailgating.
Bills Mafia.
Yeah, but I I just didn't foresee a good likelihood that we could win the game, so I'm not I'm not going to waste my money and just get let down. I went to a game in Pittsburgh 2 years ago, week 2. It was a lot of fun, in part because we won the game. It was also a great experience, and I really loved Pittsburgh as a city. But uh, you know, that's that shit has got to hurt when you travel, spend all that money, and they lose. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's going on a massive tangent. That's besides the point. I just yeah, I think my biggest point was I was highly considering like months ago, like, man, I'd love to go to that Bills game because other reason, the Bills are getting a new stadium soon. And maybe the next time the Raiders play them in Buffalo, they're going to have that new stadium, and I'm just going to go, well, I'm not paying that much money for it, you know.
Yeah.
And also the genuine fan experience of Buffalo might fade away, just like the genuine Oakland fan, generation for the Raiders, is completely gone. And until the Raiders start winning, you're going to have 40% red in the stadium whenever the Chiefs fans show up, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
As far as week 2 against the Bills, I'm going to start with the positives, and there's not that many. And then I'm going to go into the negatives, and then we'll get on to week 3 for the Raiders. Early on, it looked like Trevon Merrick and Robert Spillane were having pretty decent games on defense. Robert Spillane eventually got a sack. He had some pressures on like blitzes and such. And then Trevon Merrick had a couple stops, I want to say, in pass coverage. But, it was nice to see them look solid. Also, Tyree Wilson looked better, like just overall. And then I saw a stat from Tristan Kuhn on Twitter, and he was basically, giving the pass blocking and run blocking grades for every player from week 2. Bear in mind, the Raiders had the number 1 offensive line for week 1. I'm not saying they have the number 1 offensive line in the NFL, because they probably don't. But in week 1,
they definitely don't. It's Philadelphia.
Probably. So, but statistically, they killed it in week 1 against the Broncos, which is saying something, because Randy Gregory was out there talking a whole lot of shit to Josh Jacobs and company. So they have a solid defense. But moral of the story here is, the offensive line didn't do as good against the Bills, but Kolton Miller is very consistent for this team. And I think it's easy to underappreciate offensive linemen because you're not really paying attention to them until it's kind of too late and they're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He had a 88.3 pass blocking grade and a 73.8 run blocking grade. Both
According
were the
to
best.
PFF?
Pretty sure, yeah. Both were the best for the Raiders this week. But he's essentially a stalwart. He's consistent. He has been consistent, and he's probably, I would argue, he's the best draft pick John Gruden made by far. You could argue it's Josh Jacobs, but as far as value to the team, Kolton Miller is one of the top 5 most valuable players on this team. And that is it for my positives for this game. I mean, you can add in Davante Adams if you want. He looked good, as usual, but that's kind of expected. I couldn't name you another player on defense that had anything really good to talk about, and the same might go for offense. So, as far as the negatives, defensive line just couldn't get pressure. They could not get home to Josh Allen. And it, like, even when they did get pressure, because, I mean, like I said, Robert Spillane, I think he had 4 pressures. It just didn't fucking matter. Like, Josh Allen would just, like, sidearm it and get a first down. And it was like, the corners were getting absolutely burnt. There was one play, I think Nate Hobbs gave up a touchdown. It just looked like he fell asleep at the wheel. It was like, he's covering the slot guy, and he was probably like kind of just hovering with the wide receiver, like trying to keep stride with him. The receiver was running a crosser, and Hobbs was like one step behind him, and he was watching the quarterback, Josh Allen, and the Raiders got like good pressure on Josh Allen on this play. It's in the red zone, 3rd down. And because he's watching the quarterback, he's not paying attention to the receiver who's slowly but surely separating from him. Josh Allen makes one little quick step, sidearms it.
Touchdown.
And Nate Hobbs looks back at his receiver, and he's out of reach. And it's like, you watch the replay in slow motion, it's like, dude, what the fuck? There's just a little shit like that at corner. I would say the corners looked worse than the safeties, on Sunday for once. It just felt like the Bills wanted it more. They went for, I want to say, multiple fourth down conversions, and I think they converted on all of them that they went for, And then as far as offense for the Raiders, the first drive was immaculate. It was absolutely beautiful. The Raiders were up 7-0. And then the first drive on defense, the Raiders forced, I want to say, a 3-and-out. And it was looking like, oh, all right, we came to play. And then from that point on, we were not there to play. And I think what really started all the issues was a couple of deflected passes by Jimmy Garoppolo. One that got, I want to say, intercepted. And then there was another one that got deflected. And then eventually Jimmy G threw the one to Josh Jacobs, where the linebacker somehow just absolutely mossed Jacobs, like just jumped over him and has arms in front of his head like this and caught the ball.
Should have been caught by Jacobs.
Yeah, honestly, by that point I was kind of checked out. After halftime, I really was just watching the game on my phone and doing something else.
Like to me, the pass was a little high, but Jacobs I still feel like has the leverage from there, and then the linebacker just got over him and ripped it out.
Yeah, I think if anything, at least assuming what's probably happening in like a slow motion sort of way, once Jacobs sees that the guy has his arms over him like this and is catching the ball, he should be like getting the ball out. Like I watched the play for the Carolina Panthers and Saints tonight where the first overall pick, forgetting his name,
Bryce
I
Young.
want to say, there you go, yeah. He threw a pass to Adam Thielen, and the corner just ran the route for Adam Thielen. And it was going towards the sideline, and the corner caught the ball, and Thielen was in front of the corner, and he went like this. He was literally turned away from him, swiped his hand back, and hit the ball and caused him to drop the ball. And then they fell out of bounds, and it wasn't an interception. So they punt the ball instead of an interception. This is a heads-up play. It's just little things like that. It's like, I mean, one thing that's always annoyed me, and I see more and more players do it now, and it makes me feel a little better. Like guys like Nate Hobbs do this, where they try to punch at the ball, before the offensive player goes down, right? It's like, why don't players do it more? Because that little offset chance that you could punch that ball out, it's like, yeah, that getting the opportunity to get the ball to get a turnover is massive. Like, do it.
You know who was really good at that?
Well, Charles Tillman. Like, I think he was known for that.
Josh Norman. Josh Norman would allow wide receivers to get the catch just so he could fucking charge up and punch it out.
Yeah.
It was great because it was like, yeah, he's leading the NFL in turnovers or leading the Niners in turnovers, but he's allowing like fucking 100 yards to to this receiver and like just fucking like allowing receivers to have field days over him.
Yeah.
Because he was old by the time he was on the Niners.
Yeah. That just kind of gets to my second to last point, which is, the turnover differential was probably the main difference in this game, other than Josh Allen being Josh Allen, and just he only had like 6 incompletions on like 37 attempts. Like he torched the defense. But the turnovers on offense was a massive difference considering the Raiders didn't get any turnovers on the Bills. And then lastly, Josh Jacobs, I would pull up his stats, but I don't even care. He went for negative yardage on like 9 attempts. I want to say it was -7 for 9 attempts. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
he had, I think it was nine rush attempts for -2.
Yeah, -2. But yeah, that can't happen. And really, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand between Jacobs looking rusty, and I think mostly it was the offensive line not pass or run blocking very well in this game. They just looked off. And then the Bills defense. I mean, Ed Oliver was just blowing up plays early on. It was kind of tough to watch.
Mhm,
So that's all I have for the Bills game. I
mhm.
It was a loss that was expected, so I wasn't too emotional over it. Um, but that's not the way you want to see your team go down. Like I'd rather see them fight until the end, like say, that Steelers and Browns game or something like that.
Mhm.
Or just week one, the way that came down to the wire. Like if if you're gonna lose, at least be in the game. Like when you get killed, like you do against the Bills, it makes you feel like, oh well, all the media and all these people that just expected the Raiders to be absolute shit this year were kind of right, and this is who they are, And I don't think they are that team that played this past Sunday, but more I'm more confident that they are that team most likely when they face teams like the Bills or the Eagles or upper tier top 5 to 6 teams in the league. When they face a juggernaut, they're not going to be able to hold their ground. And like I'd like to see this team make the playoffs, but if they're that type of team, I'd rather not win many games. And that's the thing I said on the first podcast was if we're just going to be middle of the pack, barely getting by and getting a couple wins and end up with 7 or 8, and then get the 14th overall pick and get an absolute nobody that does not change this franchise for the next 10 years. I don't fucking want it. Like, if we can make the playoffs, let's do it. If we can't, I I hate to say it, but I would rather tank. I would much rather tank and get a top tier quarterback that can change this franchise rather than sit through this bullshit for the next 5 years.
So real quick, I want to get to, sort of talking about a couple things that you said, and then I'm going to get to some comments. But what I want to say is, based on what you just said right now, um, if let's just say you had the 14th overall pick. I mean, what pick did you guys get Colton Miller with? The
I
15th
want
pick?
I want to say it was the 15th pick. They traded back
So,
from 10th.
so you said that you don't want a nobody in the first round,
Mhm.
right?
I don't want
Uh,
a guy who's not going to change this franchise.
so
I shouldn't
Colton
say
Miller has
nobody,
at
but
least been a decent starter, and you just a couple minutes ago, like at the beginning of the segment, said that Colton Miller was the best draft, arguably the best draft pick that John Gruden has had. And I want you to clarify, Mike. Are you saying that Colton Miller is the best draft pick, period, that John Gruden has had, or the best first round pick?
I meant first round pick, the best pick that he
Okay.
had. Although the way that I feel about Gruden and Mayock was the first round was Gruden, unless it was a defensive player, and then Mayock probably had a lot more say in the scouts and whatnot. So I think Cleveland Farrell, for example, was a Mayock guy, and their
Mhm.
plan was to get Farrell in the draft. And when Boza and Quentin Williams weren't there at 4, they said, "Well, nobody's calling up to trade up, so we're gonna have to take our guy." Um, but offensive players, I think, were definitely Gruden's guys in the first round again. So Jacobs, Colton Miller, um, Henry Ruggs, and I feel like there's probably another one that I'm forgetting. But oh yeah, Alex Leatherwood. So but yeah, I think as the rounds went on, you got more towards the Mayock and draft scout guys, and that's where you find yourself a Max Crosby, a Hunter Renfro, Foster
That's what I was
Moreau.
gonna get to. I was gonna say, there's no way that Colton Miller is anywhere near as close as a great pick as Max Crosby was.
No, no,
Like
not at
Max
all.
Crosby, solid starting tackle in the NFL. I mean,
Yeah,
did I say Max Crosby? I meant Colton Miller, solid starting tackle in the NFL. Max Crosby is all pro, all pro pass rusher at one of the premium positions in the NFL. So I just wanted to clarify that you knew what you were saying, and I figured you would change your mind if I reminded you that you overlooked Max Crosby.
Yeah, no, I meant first round pick, but no, it's a good
Mhm.
clarification. I think, but that also kind of goes hand in hand with this, which is like I don't want Max Crosby's prime
To
and
go to
even Colton
waste.
Miller's to go to waste. Like I think it, if Jimmy G can't take them to the playoffs in the next 2 years, you just wasted the last of Devonte Adams' prime. He's going to dwindle down into a like a late career. I don't want to say Julio Jones because he really fell off, but you know what I mean. Like once
Like
they
a Randy
turn past,
Moss.
yeah, like once they turn past like 32, it's just it's over.
Randy
And
Moss, AJ Green, like
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say like Roddy White, just players
DeAndre
like that.
Hopkins right now.
Yeah, that's a good example. Um, but I mean, the nice thing about Devontae is he's already like 30 or however old he is, like, and he's still. I would still argue he's the best wide receiver in football. So,
Mhm.
but again, give it 2 more years and he won't be, and it's gonna be like, well, what was that for? Like it was fun, but where does that really? Where did that take us? And I know that was a big
Mhm.
Derek Carr thing, but still, just I I think my main thing, like I was saying, I don't want a nobody, and I want somebody that's going to change this franchise. What I'm really saying is, I want a quarterback, and I don't want a
Mhm.
15th overall quarterback like a Mac Jones. I want a first overall pick. The player is going to change the franchise undoubtedly. If we had a chance at Caleb Williams, I'm getting Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
That I just
Um,
and I know Pat Mahomes was the 10th overall pick or whatever he was, but it's like the likelihood that the best quarterback in the class is going to be the one that you pick at 10th overall is extremely low, you know?
mhm.
Um, I'd rather see the team be in the position to get a Trevor Lawrence, a Caleb Williams, one of those
Mhm.
guys that goes first overall. And it's like no brainer.
Yeah. So, I mean, a guy that you've wanted in the past, and I know that you probably don't have any interest anymore in this player. Deshaun Watson went 12th overall. Lamar Jackson even went 31st, 32nd overall to the Ravens.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson had his questions, which I mean, I don't know. For some reason, every time that the quarterback like him comes out, and there's questions about what position he's going to play, it's like, oh, we just don't know. Whereas like a guy like Johnny Manziel went like higher than him, or at least in the positional. Was
Mhm.
Deshaun Watson 12th or second overall or fourth? I thought it was fourth.
No, Deshaun Watson taken fourth overall by, or I mean, 12th overall by Houston.
Deshaun Watson was 12th overall.
Yes. So this is how that draft went. This is the 2017 draft.
Mm.
It went Miles Garrett, Mitchell Trubisky, Solomon Thomas, Leonard Fournette, Corey Davis, Jamal Adams, Mike Williams, Christian McCaffrey, John Ross, Patrick Mahomes, Marshawn Lattimore, Deshaun Watson, Hassan Reddick, Derek Barnett, Malik Hooker. The list goes
Mm.
on.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah.
yeah, Watson fell, and he was pretty good in college. You know,
Yeah.
so
I will
you can
say,
still get
I
guys.
yeah, but I think times have changed a little bit where it feels like the top quarterbacks go to the top like picks, like whether it was Trey
That
Lance
doesn't
going
mean they're
third
good.
overall. It definitely doesn't. But if the top three quarterbacks in the class go 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 4, and you're sitting there at 12 and you're like, well, should we take the fourth or fifth quarterback? It's like at that rate, take the top defensive end or the top offensive tackle or whatever is there. But is he going to change your franchise for the next 12 years? There's a good likelihood that he won't. But if you're sitting there at first overall and Caleb Williams is sitting there, there's a good likelihood that he will.
Hmm.
I want to. I don't care what position it is. I would rather it be that we just come off the playoffs. We got the 20th overall pick, And oh, look at that. They picked quarterback uh Schmancy Pants at 20th overall. And in 2 years, we realized that, oh my gosh, he's the second coming of whatever great quarterback, Joe Montana. I don't know. Right. And it's like, oh, he's going to be the next greatest quarterback ever. Like, yeah, I'd rather it be 20th overall than first. But you have your highest chance of getting him at first overall. That I just.
Well, all right. Who are the top? All right. Let's just take like, we can take this year's draft, but the sample size is like way too small. What about who are the quarterbacks in last year's draft? Like Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback off the board. I don't even think he looks that good. The year prior was Trevor Lawrence, who looks good, and he was the number 1 overall pick. Then it was Zach Wilson, who doesn't look good. Then it was Trey Lance, who thus far has not gotten even a chance to play. So that doesn't look good because he hasn't gotten his opportunity, and it's been so long since he's played. Right. So that situation just gets worse for him. Then after that, who was next? Was it Justin Fields or Mac Jones? It was Justin Fields, then Mac Jones. Yeah. And Justin Fields doesn't look good. And at least he can run. And he went, what, 12, like 14th? 11th?
I think 12th. But
no,
I think
Micah Parsons went 12th.
It doesn't matter. My thing is, any given year, it could be different. You know, any given year, it could be the top 4 quarterbacks will be bona fide Pro Bowlers, and then the next year, not one of them, like the Kenny Pickett year, you know. Mm-hmm. So you have to get lucky. It sounds like next year's draft is going to be
loaded,
at least loaded to a degree at the top. So, obviously Caleb Williams is all the talk, but Drake May gets a lot of hype, and there's a couple other guys. And now you have Shadur Sanders. However you pronounce his name, and that's interesting. Although, admittedly, I don't see Josh McDaniels going for a mobile quarterback unless he feels that he's uber accurate and extremely smart. So I just, I think, again, my whole point is just, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what pick. I just want the best chance to get the best quarterback that could best change this franchise into being the team that I'm willing to spend $600 to go pay a ticket for. Mm-hmm. That's my point.
Yeah.
And my point, than that, go ahead.
My point is, if you select a quarterback, in the top 5, there's no guarantee that they're actually going to be good. And I think Zach Wilson is probably the best example that we've seen recently. But I mean, he could turn out to be good eventually, but so far it hasn't been good.
Yeah.
Real quick, before I get into the comments, I know I've kept the people, our audience waiting, and there's actually, a good amount of pretty good comments. I have to say, my things about the Raiders versus Bills game, my thoughts are, the game looked like the Raiders came out to play, and then there was a turnover that the Raiders got, and the Raiders were going to have their second possession. And I want to say, what happened, Mike? Did the Raiders turn it over near the end zone, and they ended up not scoring, and the Bills got the ball back when it was 7-0?
Yeah, I want to say that was the first interception off of the deflected pass.
Was that in the end zone?
No, I don't think it was in the end zone, but it was like they were driving. Mm-hmm. I think, we forced a punt for the Bills, had a couple plays. We were moving positively on the Bills, and then second or third down, Jimmy G tried to throw the ball over somebody, and it got deflected. Another defensive lineman picks it off, and then Bills go down, score a touchdown. Now you have a tie ball game instead of, at least, no matter what, if the Raiders go down and score, it's a 2-possession game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If the Raiders would have scored that, I feel like the game maybe plays out a little bit differently, and the Raiders are able to play more at their pace. Like I mentioned last week, that in order for the Raiders to win this game, they were going to have to come out and set the tone of the game. Being up 2 touchdowns on the Bills, I feel like the Bills, I don't know. It seems like there's some turmoil there, reportedly on the Stephon Diggs front. I know he's a pretty emotional player, but not turmoil to where, he'll like walk out on the team or anything, but just like, Josh Allen looked, just a week prior looked, phased by the New York Jets, and like the spotlight was maybe, I mean, it wasn't too big for him. We've seen Josh Allen in like bigger moments, but
he was just turning it over, and the Jets actually have a good defense, whereas the Raiders don't. I just think I don't think there's much turmoil. It's just there's a rumor about just Stephon Diggs dating back to last postseason, but I don't see any actual indication that he clearly wants off the team. Like, as long as they're successful, he'll be fine, and they will be fine.
Not that he wants off the team, but I think the report is that he would just rather be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or the rumor, I should say.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that, after the Raiders missed that opportunity, the Bills were just relentless and the game got out of hand. And, it just sort of is what it is at that point. But one thing that really pissed me off was the Raiders were down 38 to 10, or was it 38-10, Mike, the final score?
That sounds about right. Maybe 34.
They were down 38-10 with 3 minutes left. And they still have their starters in there. And fucking, Jimmy Garoppolo throws it into triple coverage and Davante Adams gets knocked out of the game. Josh McDaniels, you're not gonna come back from 28 points, down 28 points with 3 minutes left. You live to fight another day. Get your stars out of there. If Davante doesn't play next week, you're not beating the fucking Steelers. This is like fucking think, McFly. Like it's a little inexcusable. I feel like you're already thin at wide receiver because there's no guarantee that Jacoby Myers even would have played against the Steelers because he's still in concussion protocol. Now imagine you add another guy on top of that, and then you're left with Hunter Renfrow and Michael Mayer and whoever else, right? So I think Josh McDaniels, he's got to make those adjustments to where if the game is out of reach, whether it's one way or another, you probably want to pull the guys that you're going to need the following week out. Luckily, it seems like Davante Adams is fine.
Yeah, it sounds like he's not, like he doesn't have a concussion, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, other than that, I think I'm ready to move on. That was just something that stood out to me and pissed me off because I'm like, it's so stupid and avoidable. So, I'm gonna go ahead and take comments. Fonzie says, "What's up, guys?" Fonzie, thank you for tuning in again. We really appreciate you checking us out. Multiple times, coming here and sharing your thoughts. And Fonzie said, "Man," because I think we were talking about the draft picks that Gruden has had. Fonzie also said, "The Raiders started good. I thought they'd continue where they left off, and they did until the coverage started breaking down." Yeah, that was a story of the game pretty much. Josh Jacobs disappointed for sure. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, Jacobs was bad. Mike, remember when I brought up to you that Josh Jacobs didn't look the same to me? I noticed from Jacobs, he was hesitant on, his cuts. And sometimes it's just plant your foot and fucking go upfield. Don't try to Le'Veon Bell it. Just fucking go.
Yeah, I think it was also a lot to do with the run blocking from the offensive line, but like I said, I think he looks
a little out of shape.
No, I think he looks
like not in game
rusty.
shape.
I think he just looks rusty.
I think he needs to get in game shape. So that's part of the rust. You can call it rust. I can call it that. I feel like we're talking about the same thing. Fonzie also said, I'm a Niner fan, but I never had an issue with Jimmy G, so I'd like to see him do good. STX says, who are the Niners paying first? I'm assuming playing first. So they played Pittsburgh week 1, and then this week they're going to be playing the Giants. So I hope that answered your question.
Now I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
The Dutch
with
Bros.
The Slurpee. Was that?
It's
oh, yeah,
Dutch
it was
Bros.
Dutch Bros.
Amazing
Yeah, I was
drinks.
looking at the tiny. Yeah. Fonzie said, I took Renfro late in my fantasy draft because he seemed like a great option for Jimmy in the check down. You know, I thought the exact same thing, but luckily I didn't draft Renfro. I don't know what's going on and why they're not getting him more involved. I feel like he could really alleviate pressure, for Myers, Mayer, and Adams if they were, and even Jacobs too, because you have to respect Renfro when he's out, in the field.
Yeah, I think at this rate, I wish they would have traded him last year when he still had like maybe a higher value, because the longer that they just kind of keep him on the side, on the sidelines, he's not going to have value. And I don't know. I don't remember if he's under contract after the season, but let's just say he is. They'll be lucky to get a 6th-round pick for him at this rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there should be teams out there that would want him. Maybe at this trade deadline they'll do it. But I think the reason why he's not getting the ball is because they're running a lot of 2 tight end sets and or just 2 wide receiver sets where it's Devontae and Jacoby Myers. And for some reason, they're not really using the slot much, or they also bring in DeAndre Carter or even Trey Tucker. And that was kind of a thing that I noticed, and that was the reason why Renfro getting traded was a big rumor this offseason, was the Raiders brought in a lot of slot receivers, So we thought, like, well, it looks like they're trying to replace him. And then they keep him, and now it's like, well, they have 3 guys out of 6 receivers, so half of the receivers on this roster are their slot receivers. So, Jacoby Myers was out this week. You saw a lot more of Renfro, but you also saw a lot of Christian Wilkerson because he was the one other wide receiver that's not a primary slot receiver. So I thought the same thing as far as Renfro with Jimmy G. I thought he would be the perfect match for him. But it seems like the offensive play calling isn't quite favoring Renfro. So.
Mm-hmm. Another fantastic comment that Fonzie has here is, where did Aaron Rodgers go in 2005? Mike, do you know this answer? Because I do.
Oh, he went like 24th overall, 1 pick
Precisely.
after the Raiders.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So you must have known that because you would have loved to have had Aaron Rodgers on the Raiders.
Well, I knew that because the 1st-round draft issues predate John Gruden and really, date back to his first stint with the Raiders back up until 2001. So, yeah. Yeah, any given year, anything can happen. I mean, look at Jordan Love. I think he was the 24th overall pick, and as of 2 weeks, he's like the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the league statistically. So you never know. And Aiden O'Connell could be the next Brock Purdy or something along those lines. It's just that's why I specifically said if we can't make the playoffs, if we're just going to be a 7 or 8 win team, I would rather tank and get the 1st overall pick. That's what I'm saying by tank. I mean, I want the 1st pick. Like, yes, if you get the 3rd pick and you get a Zach Wilson, it's like that's way worse than barely missing the playoffs, going 16th overall and getting a solid free safety or whatever, that can at least be a game changer for you for 5 years. But I'm saying what this team needs, and this is what I said on the first podcast that we had, what this team needs is the franchise, not game, franchise changing quarterback. They need the
Mhm.
franchise quarterback of the future. They need the Josh Allen. They need the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrow, the Justin Herbert. The list goes on. Because those guys make other defenses and other teams look the way that Josh Allen made the Raiders look this weekend. That's what I
Mhm.
need. Because it sure as shit isn't going to be their defense that ever changes, apparently.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I'm ready for week 3.
Yeah. Uh, we're almost done with the comments. Uh, so Fonzie feels like the Raiders came out to play. Um, you know, and then he said same as Bosa. Yeah, I thought Bosa looked pretty good, even though he didn't record a sack. Uh, I don't keep up too much with Raiders news. It sucks that Renfro won't get a chance with Jimmy. Yeah, we'll see, because it looks like Renfro could get the Trent Taylor role that or the Trent Taylor Jimmy connection that was there on the Niners. And then Fonzie says every team needs a franchise quarterback, and I agree. So
That's just how the NFL is today. So that's why
mm,
I want it so bad. That's why I'm willing to tank. I'd give up one
mm,
season. I would give up the season if that meant we had Caleb Williams and he's a 12-year bona fide perennial Pro Bowler,
mm.
top 5 quarterback.
But not so fast, Mike. Not so fast. Okay, because the Raiders are still in first place, so it's okay. All right. The Raiders are still in first place in the AFC West. It was just one game, and you live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you, uh, that a week ago. Hey, I mean, if you look at the Raiders' upcoming schedule up until week 10, I could see them being a 6 to 7 win team out of 10 weeks. So 6-4, 7-3, and that was including a predicted loss to the Bills. So if they can get back to week 1 form while getting more efficient and having less penalties and you know turning around the turnover differential, they could go win 7 games and they can go out there and shock some people and possibly make the playoffs. But up week 3 is coming up and we're playing a team that might not be as bad as we might have thought.
Mm-hmm. So, real quick, I just wanted to share this because this was the thing when Jimmy was on the Niners. Right now, you are in this stage of the Jimmy cycle. Okay. Jimmy played like shit on Sunday. And, Raider fans, get used to it, because if you guys are down big, you're not coming back with Jimmy Garoppolo as your player, not without help from your other playmakers. And Josh Jacobs didn't show up on yesterday, and it's pretty hard when you're not getting the ground game established. But next, you're gonna want fan. I mean, I don't think fans want Jimmy benched yet, but I don't know, because I haven't spoken with many Raider fans. So, I mean, you guys can let us know in the comments. But after that, Jimmy gets the underdog mentality, goes off against a bad team, and then fans don't want him benched, and it just repeats over and over. So that's been the experience, at least that I've witnessed.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole there's a whole conversation to be had about how I felt about the Raiders signing Jimmy G from day one, but I'll save that for another time. But
Mm-hmm.
this is essentially what I expected. There's going to be good games. There's going to be, hell, even some great games, and there's also going to be some absolutely horrible games.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's him, they're not going to be a Super Bowl winner. And that's again why I want
A franchise
the franchise changing quarterback.